Hi, everyone. Welcome. So sometimes these craft chats are inspired by stuff I read, of course, and I just finished reading a manuscript that had a little bit of a tendency here and there to do filler words and to what I call qualifying language, words like just and maybe, and it seems that, and all the rest. And I know we're in a space of generating here, and so certainly this is more of an editorial practice, something that will come later. But I did want to preface this by saying that this was a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago. I gave a presentation at the San Miguel de Allende Writers Conference about memoir, and I was teaching, and she was a colleague, but also a student afterwards came up to me and said, I counted how many times you said, and it was 28 times in the course of a pretty short presentation. And I was a little taken aback because it was a lot to inform me in that moment. And it was right after I had finished, but it stuck with me. It was one of those moments where I was like, I say, a lot. And same as I just said, I was like, that's also something that I say. And I think it's very helpful, even if a little disconcerting, to record yourself or to listen to yourself in conversation and notice what are your filler words. For some of you, it might be or ah, like, things like that. But the point being that it translates into our writing, and our filler words in our writing might not be the same as our filler words in our speech. But the more that we're aware of it, the more we can curb our language. And even though I still say, a lot, I hear it in my podcast, for instance, and I always kind of laugh and catch myself on it. But I have reduced the amount that I say, though, that little phrase by a lot. And so this is kind of about awareness and thinking through what are your things. And even as I'm speaking, I'm thinking another one of mine is kind of, right? Another qualifying word. So let's look at, I brought this up again. We're going to look at slideshow today. Here are some very specific examples. Very, really, and highly. As I said, they're words that don't add value. And I almost always capture very and really in my editing and just remove them. I truly think they are unnecessary. And so take a look at those, especially if you have a tendency to use really, very, and highly a lot. But you can see in the examples, as I said, they're not additive. At the very end of class, as we lay in Savasana, he came over and touched my feet. It doesn't matter if it's at the very end or at the end. And you'll see this in your own writing, undoubtedly. The next ones that I have here are qualifying language. And by that, I mean words like maybe, perhaps, it seems that, I suppose, and I guess. Those kinds of words, again, you can use them sparingly. I'm not against these kinds of words by any means, but I do think that they can tend to be overused. And so the example here says, it seems that as we age, our physical veneer erodes and the care we have given to our interior becomes evident. And so if you look at that, it seems that you can see that it just doesn't really add all that much. And that's kind of the point that I'm making here, is around whether these things are additive and what they add to your own writing. And again, might be something that you're going to spend a lot more time thinking about when you get into your edits, but noticing will curb your language. All right, so let's look at this one. Prepositions to start sentences are often crutches. Use them, but mind how often. So the manuscript that I just read was full of these, and they're evident. They start to become repetitive. So be mindful if you're doing this kind of thing. And so, and yet, but. The other thing is that when you see them a lot in a manuscript, they start to pop off the page because they're so particular. And so, yes, appropriate to start sentences in this way, but if you do it too much, it's going to become really evident to the reader. Ways of entering into reflection that are not additive, words, phrases, or beginnings of phrases like "it occurred to me," "I remembered," and "I realized." These, in my opinion, are words that are just unnecessary, in part because whatever you say that it occurred to you, or you remembered, or you realized really can be quite implied in the language itself. So this was a sentence that I found that has all kinds of stuff going on. You can see many, many words that are unnecessary and qualifying. As I pick him up and get settled in my nursing chair, it occurs to me that despite our best efforts to control things, there are just so many things in life that are out of our control. For most of my life, this thought would have been terrifying, but now I realize maybe there's something liberating about it. So a lot of unnecessary language. And again, as a first pass, perfectly fine. This is not to be critical of early drafts or what Annie Lamott calls the shitty first draft or the what happened draft, but just noticing how often you might be using words like "it occurred to me," "I remembered," and "I realized." And in memoir, noticing that, again, these things are implied. That I do want to end here the finale on the word "that," because as I say here, it's the most overused word there is. How often might you be able to cut the word "that"? And I say here, probably more than you imagine. So let's look at some examples. It says, maybe only by accepting that there are things in life that can't be controlled can I truly let go and embrace the one thing I can control, how I choose to live each and every day. Maybe only by accepting the fact that life is fragile. It's a lot of that, as you can see here. And so looking and thinking in this context, I just completely rearranged the sentence and said, through accepting things as they are, we let go of control. I learned through this experience to appreciate beauty through how I choose to live or chose to live each and every day. So again, the that's can be a little bit out of control, I find. And here is an example of just some sentences I've seen in the past week that had that, and that was not necessary. This did not mean that we have to strive to create great art. This does not mean we have to strive to create great art. You know, lots and lots and lots of times I see that just being unnecessary. This was actually a headline that one of my staff people sent to me this week, 5 ways that Amazon can help you sell more books. And I just said, get rid of the that. 5 ways Amazon can help you sell more books, much more straightforward. And then it is often great love and suffering that drop us into the middle of deep knowing. I love to see these more declarative sentences, especially in memoir, right? Because you are asserting something that you know to be true. And so this is the stuff of reflection and takeaway when you take a stand for what you know to be true. And then you can just say, great love and great suffering drop, I should say, us into deep knowing. So that's it for the filler words and qualifying language, although there's a lot of this kind of stuff. And I'm sure you all have seen, you know, in your own writing and in others' writing when this shows up. But be mindful in your speech, see what happens as you pay more attention to it, reduce the number of whatever the things are that you say.